Welcome everybody to a very, very special episode of the Tourism Hub podcast. Well, I would like to say it's my second international guest and my second returning guest all in one history-making podcast. Please welcome to the show today Jane Thompson from both Jane and Nikos Golfinopoulos.
Very nice.
From ICF. Now, there's a lot to unpack today, but we're going to start with ICF. It's a global consultancy. We know and are familiar with that, the acronym, but I'll just start there, Jane. If you could just take us through ICF, the organisation, and its journey.
Yeah, of course. So ICF actually stands for Inner City Fund, or it did. We don't use that anymore, but it's a great origin story. We're about 55 years old, and it was started originally by a World War II philanthropist pilot, as it happens, and because I'm an aviation geek, and he established a venture capital fund in Washington, D.C. all those years ago, and it was centered around doing good projects for disadvantaged communities and helping them become more prosperous and resilient. And that is the core ethos still of ICF today. We talk about doing projects that are about building a more prosperous and resilient world. And everything that we do is centered around that ethos, which I'm very, very proud of.
I find that inspiring, like to build wealth for the purpose of doing good work like that. Like what a like 55 years ago to be thinking that, like if we have if there's a purpose for building wealth to be able to contribute in that way and the legacy still living on and staying, and that ethos still staying true. Now, we talk about aviation, if we can just, before we go to Nikos and your journey, because the last time we met, it wasn't ICF. You had quite a significant career at UNWTO. And we love the acronyms, right?
Yeah, we
United Nations World Tourism Organization. I encourage everybody to go back, because we had to do that over 2 episodes, if I can recall.
No, I think it was 1 episode.
Was it? Or
We
maybe
managed
we
it in
cut it
once.
up. Yeah.
And I think also that I am the first returning person, not the second you said.
Oh no, the first returning.
I'm the first, thank you. So this to stay on the record, thank you.
So ICF didn't start as a tourism or
No.
aviation. So now we've got philanthropy, we've got changing, communities and doing good for the community. Tell me about your journey, Jane. Like how did you came to be to ICF, and how did your values align with this ethos?
Yeah, so cutting a very long story short, I've been in aviation for my pretty much my whole career. I did leave for 6 months at one point, and I hated it so much I came straight back again. Not all with ICF. So I started out as on the operator side with what was BAA, the British Airports Authority in the UK, which was the group that operated Heathrow, Gatwick and Stansted airports, 4 of the smaller airports in the UK, which meant I started with my sleeves rolled up, operating on the shop floor, if you like. And goodness me, I learnt so much during that period of time. And that was only 5 years of my career, but I then moved out and did a number of other roles across the aviation industry, and I ended up in consulting a dozen or so years ago. And this is my 3rd consulting role, but it's the longest I've been in any role in my whole career. So I'm into my 8th year here now, because I love working with passionate experts like Nikos here. And I get the pleasure every day
Make me blush.
of working with many of such experts across multiple disciplines across aviation and tourism. And then in the wider ICF, and what I didn't say before is that ICF has now grown to almost 10,000 staff. We're a big firm, global, 70 odd offices globally, and we cover many disciplines. So we're not just aviation, travel and tourism. We cover many disciplines: energy, renewables, policy, disaster management, healthcare, education. Very, very strong on climate and sustainability, and actually have been for that whole 55-year history. And we get the pleasure of working with all of those experts to plug together solutions for the quite often big problems that our clients have that they need us to help them solve.
And the big problems at the moment when it comes to sustainability, climate change, I think every tourism conference, I know that I've attended locally in Australia and regionally in my own state here in Melbourne, sustainability is a big conversation and a big challenge that we all need to navigate, from the small tourism operator to the large attractions and hotels. Aviation, though.
Yeah.
Aviation is its own big elephant in the room when it comes to travel and transporting people. You were saying SAF before, and I was just like, it's just a term I haven't.
What do you mean?
Yeah. It was a term because I was trying to think like the carbon emissions, like with transporting people on a plane. So tell me about, like, you just now, if we go back to just the work that is done in that space, how close are we to having? I mean, is it a solvable problem? Maybe that's where I'll go with that.
Very good question. Okay, but let me give you some context though.
Please.
I don't think I'm unusual in the industry. Somebody who's been in the industry for their whole career, in going on a journey myself. So I started out thinking, goodness me, I'm in this. How lucky am I? I'm in this industry that's growing every year, and how many industries can say that? And aren't I lucky? And it was only in the last, I think, 10 years of my career, perhaps slightly less, that the realisation has dawned on me that we don't fly around the world, though as much as it is a force for good, without consequence. And aviation has some significant consequences. There's a lot of carbon that comes out the back of that tailpipe. And we need to start doing something about it. And I think the industry as a whole went through a stage of denial. We're not as bad as the data center industry, for instance, pointing fingers elsewhere. And actually now we've started to take responsibility for our carbon footprint and are really starting collectively to do something about this. And I'm very proud of that. And there are a basket of measures that collectively the industry is looking at as solutions. SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel, is the most realistic near-term solution that we have. But there's also electric aviation, there's hydrogen aviation, there's a whole suite of efficiency measures that the manufacturers of both engines and airframes are developing every day to improve the efficiency and fuel burn of the aircraft that we are flying around today. But SAF is realistically going to be the biggest contributor to achieving net zero by 2050.
Game changing. Like it's going to happen, and we'll be saying, like, why didn't this happen sooner? Right? Like, what do you think that is? Like, it's really over the last, and I would say less than 10 years, that it's been such a prominent discussion that we're having. It's because of the erosion that's happening at such a fast pace that we've had to wake up to these challenges.
Yeah, I think there's a journey we're all going through as well. I have two daughters who are now 19 and 20, and they've pointed their fingers at me. You know, Mum, you're in an industry that's part of the problem. What are you going to do about it? And then when you sit back and go, oh, actually, she's right. They're right, and I'm in an industry, in a company that can actually do something about this.
Yeah.
So then I felt I have a responsibility to actually do that now. So together with some superb colleagues back in our London and our Spanish offices and our US offices, we have set about putting together a suite of solutions that has helped the airlines to buy more SAF and governments to put in place the right policy and producers to find investment to put in place their production facilities. And we're really very proud of the suite of solutions that we've developed. And we are now one of, if not the leading global SAF consulting firm.
Oh, it's leading the way. So are there airlines already operating on SAF?
Oh, yes. So this is a fuel that that operates in existing aircraft engines. It's certified only it's a drop-in fuel. So you mix it with Jet A1 fuel, certified up to 50% at the minute. You have almost certainly flown in an aircraft that is powered by SAF. And SAF is non-fossil derived kerosene equivalent. It's chemically identical to Jet A1 kerosene. And it's derived from feedstocks that could be fats, oils and greases, used fats, oils and greases, agricultural waste, municipal solid waste. And there are technical processes that exist to convert those feedstocks into fuel that is, as I say, chemically identical. I know.
Mind-blowing, no?
Mind-blowing. So as a consumer, when you're making decisions, like, is this something you could go, like, I want to fly in this way? Are we at that stage?
We're not quite at that stage.
Yeah.
Because we can't yet track the SAF aircraft to aircraft.
Right.
But if consumers were minded to, they could find out which airlines were currently buying it, and an increasing number of airlines are buying SAF. And I think it will soon become a buying decision for consumers. More so at the minute, we're seeing that corporate businesses are doing deals with airlines that they fly with regularly to buy the rights to the emissions reductions of the SAF to offset their own corporate business travel emissions.
Wow. Well, there you go. I learned something.
If I've blinded you with science.
Obviously, you can become speechless.
Yeah. So now, enter stage left for Nikos, and how you're now collaborating together, because I can see now as a team for the work that you're doing, and then coming in, heading up the tourism department within the organisation. First, if we pick up from when we last spoke to you, from UNWTO, tell me about this journey and the transition into joining ICF, and what's excited you about joining this organisation and hearing this level of leading the charge and being involved in that.
Well, this is a rather big question, no? Isn't it?
Yes.
Like, what prompted you to change?
Yes.
And I really believe that change is inevitable for all of us at some point. What triggers it, of course, differs from person to person. For me, working for UN Tourism now, this has a new name.
It's not UN.
It's UN Tourism now.
Oh,
yes.
there you go.
There you go. Some information for you guys as
Yeah.
It was very important for me to feel that I am a true tourist professional, and that I can be able to advise both private and public stakeholders or clients or partners, in a sense, on how we can collectively move forward when it comes to advancing on sustainability, on a better tourism for a better world in that sense. And in order to do that, I needed to not only have the experience from the international/public sector, I needed to have the experience from the private sector. Because if tourism is something, it's this combination of public and private partnership that it's absolutely necessary in order for tourism to flourish. If without that, tourism cannot operate on what we would call a good manner, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I have after 7 years of being with UN Tourism, an amazing experience, and with a deep respect of the organization, I decided that I wanted to do the next step and enter the private sector field to experience not only the challenges that the private sector faces, but also the possibilities that it gives you in terms of, being very innovative, being able to reach new heights with opportunities that arise. And these opportunities require sometimes very quick decisions. And private sector is very good in doing these quick decisions. And also through the interview process, and Jane was one of the interviewers that I had. You can interrogate her more why she chose me. But during this process, I realized that ICF is a company that has very good experts. And that, to me, it gave me the confidence that I'm going to be working for an organization that really does good contribution to the world.
Yeah.
And just because the values that I have seen for ICF of building a more prosperous and resilient world for all really align with what I wanted to do, and really align with UN tourism as well.
Yeah.
It wasn't such a shift of, trajectory. It was more of advancing and me entering another field, which was the field of private sector. And to be honest, I have had a year now of very interesting and very enjoyable work with ICF.
And something I can see your ability to just connect dots, Nikos, in seeing the way that your role and key stakeholder engagement, even just the dinner that you gathered tonight, it's just Nikos doing. I'll bring this person, that person, and you can have a really beautiful experience. So what has been some of the learnings in the last 12 months for you?
That no idea is crazy enough, as long as you can justify it.
Yeah.
That we need to open up our minds in order to be able to see the connections that are not very obvious, because these connections will help us deal with the challenges that we face in tourism. Tourism is a very complex sector. Any challenge does not require only a tourism expertise. It requires expertise from other sectors in order to be able to, be effective as a solution. And one of the challenges that I have, and I think I'm addressing the challenges very well, is how on earth are we helping this world advance when it has the challenges of climate change, it has stakeholders that have conflicting interests, it has different industries that do not want to follow the path to sustainability. So how exactly do you bring all of this together? So working with ICF and understanding all the different, Jane alluded to this before, the different expertise that we have within ICF, that we have, urban development, we have climate change, we have environmental colleagues that work in conservation, we have social impact colleagues, we have health, education. So how actually for tourism you bring all of this together in order to create solutions that are the answer to very challenging problems, one of them being climate change. So what do we do in tourism for climate change? An example, it's a new service that we have developed where we combined heat resilience with our climate colleagues. I'm not a climate scientist, but we do have climate scientists within ICF that can project the rising temperatures based on different scenarios up by 2050. So when you know in your destination what will happen in 2050, then you know that you have to take action now. And then for a tourism development perspective or tourist policy change requirements, then this is where I come in based on the knowledge and the intelligence that I receive from my climate colleagues to say, okay, so if we see that in this region or in this area, the temperatures are expected to be 45 degrees, for example, during the summer, then I know that this destination will not be viable for outdoor activities. So what do I say to this destination in order to adapt accordingly? So it's here where I have the challenge of how do I advise the destination to see the results of what is happening in 2050 in order to adapt to the climate change. So adapting to climate change requires you to take action now. And then from a tourist policy perspective, you need to start changing, because the adaptation process does not happen like in an instant. You need to take a phased approach and step by step do all the actions necessary, implement all the actions necessary in order for when the 2050 mark comes with the impact that we'll have on rising temperatures, you have already adapted and you have made the right changes. It could be you have to change the seasonality. It could be that you have to change the type of tourism experiences that you have in your destination. Maybe not outdoor experiences for a specific period of the year. Or maybe you need to redirect the flows to other destinations within your region that will be less impacted compared to your, let's say, megacity that will receive 47 degrees of Celsius, or continuous heat waves or drought periods. So all of this, for me as a tourist professional, having to work with this, is very enriching and it's very challenging, and also gives me the sense that I am really contributing to this industry.
You always take me so high level when I'm in, we always say this, I'm like micro, and Nikos takes me onto another sphere, another universe. So there's two things that I'm curious about there. Number one is when you're presented with this data, what's your strategy to decode this? Like, do you have a formula that Nikos works with that you do apply when you're presented with information like this, and you're there to put forward the steps that, okay, we need to reverse engineer and start this now so that we can be ready? What's your process there without being completely overwhelmed by it all?
Well, I'm being completely overwhelmed. So this is what is happening, like, at the start.
That's good, you're human.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But then what you need to do, like, I try to put myself in the place of the decision maker. So I'm like, okay, what if I am the one who is responsible for this destination, for example, because we're talking about heat resilience and tourism? What if I am the mayor of the city, and I receive the news that by 2050 I will have this much of heat waves during the period of this many heat waves during the period of summer, or that I will have drought periods, or that I will have a lot of rainfalls that will maybe result in floods. So what do I do now in order to say, okay, I will still have tourism as one of my sectors, but I need to adapt it. So I start from there. I'm putting myself as the one who has to make the decision. And then going step by step backwards, because you have to reverse engineer it, actually, absolutely. I'm looking, okay, if I want to reach to a level where I am resilient enough, of course there is going to be impact, right? But if I want to say, okay, I cannot have tourism now during this period of months because of this and this region resulted by the climate change and by the predictions that we have, then how can I counter that during the rest of the year, or using these tourist flows in other regions, other neighboring regions? Because it's not only for your city, if I'm the mayor, it's also how we can help each other survive on all of these big crises that will happen due to climate change, that it's coming upon us. So it might be, okay, it's fine if I don't have tourists for this month, as long as my neighbor that is in a region that is not so heavily impacted can receive these tourism flows. And in order for this to happen, maybe my neighbor needs to have the right tourist product in place. And if they do not, then we could support on advisory on how you build the tourist product, how you build the tourism experiences, or even the infrastructure. So even if you take it from the local level, because now we're talking about, like, I'm the mayor of the city, if you go upwards, you're the regional governor, then you have more cards to play with. You will say, okay, this city will be heavily impacted, the other city will not be that heavily impacted. So maybe I should focus on the other city during this region, during this period of heat waves. Or you can say, maybe this level of heat that we will have is not very enjoyable for specific source markets, whereas I have other source markets that are more used to higher heats. So this might trigger me to change my source market strategy. So who I'm attracting and when I'm attracting the traveler. So it's a huge reverse engineer process that goes, you know where you want to reach, but then you try to identify how and what policies you need to make in order each step to be effective.
I really like that, Nikos, because even for anyone listening or watching or reading, however you ingest the content, I think it's always when you're planning, thinking about, I like that, putting yourself into the decision make. So whether it's for your boss, your client, what is, how am I going to help them make the right decision? And in the same instance, that's happening now. You look at our home country, our motherland, Greece, that's all we heard this year of the extreme heats and fatalities in the heat as well. That needs to be navigated and adapted to. Who's doing it well? You are on a world stage here. Who is actually really performing best practice in mitigating sustainable, good sustainable destination management planning that is holistic to the way that they do, that they manage visitation as well as, transport and aviation? Do you have a key standout where we can look to as a model?
I think it's very important to say that I'm not saying this on purpose, but I think Australia is doing a very good job on measuring sustainability or being conscious about sustainability. Maybe not on the very, very micro level. There is a lot of space for improvement, but I have seen since when I was studying here, the big emphasis that is being placed on understanding sustainability, advocating for sustainability, and I have seen various stakeholders during these weeks. We have talked with a lot of tourism stakeholders from the national ecosystem and even the regional state ecosystems as well of tourism. And we see that sustainability is very, very high on the agenda. And not only it's high on the agenda, but also there have been very good steps ahead towards respecting and implementing what is needed for sustainability. However, the very important thing here to underline is that sustainability is not something that we reach. We will not say, okay, now I am sustainable. Yeah. Sustainability is a journey that requires you to never end. It requires you to go all the time to the step above of where you have been before in order to, advance and reassure that both your economy or your local communities, and this is very difficult to do, or your environment is being respected and protected and conserved accordingly. Yes. So, this is what I think. Jane?
Yeah, I'd just add that last year we went to the World Travel and Tourism Council Global Summit, which is where we've just come from in Perth, who did a fabulous job, I have to say, of hosting us last week in Perth. And last year's WTTC Global Summit was in Rwanda. And I had the great pleasure beforehand of doing a gorilla trek, which was a bucket list highlight of my life. But you asked about best practice, and that to me is standout best practice, where the poachers have literally become gamekeepers through good management in a particular geography. And it was a joy to see that. It was extremely well managed, very permitted, so therefore controlled tourist access into these parks. And one of my great fears in doing it was that I would feel like I was in some way trespassing in their territory, and I did not feel that, because we were a very small group. The gorilla families had been habituated over a very long period of time by trekkers who knew that family, and the family knew them, so there was trust between the gorilla family and those trekkers who were with us.
Wow.
And therefore we felt we were not impacting on that family and their behaviour adversely. So it was therefore a really positive experience. So I would put them up there for me on a pedestal of best practice.
Oh, love that. I just want to wrap this up and Google where you've been. That sounds incredible. Just on this, it's a good segue about this forum, Global World Tourism Council Forum. Is that what it is? What's the
World Travel and Tourism
Council.
World Travel and Tourism Council, and it was here in Perth, in Australia. Some key takeaways. So I glanced at the program really quickly before we met, and I saw sustainability. It had a great First Nations layer there,
Yes,
because, definitely Perth, and our First Nations and Indigenous tourism and Indigenous experiences, authentic Indigenous experiences. Perth is really leading the way. I would love to hear what ignited you and inspired you, and some key takeaways that you've taken that were, I call them Opa moments. It's my Oprah version of aha moment. Opa, what ignited you?
Well, I'll do a couple and then you can do a couple.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there was a panel on First Nations, which is, to my knowledge, the first time I have seen that, and it was hugely inspiring and humbling. I was struck throughout the event, actually throughout my whole time in WA, by the amount of respect shown to First Nations communities. Every presentation I saw was preempted with a statement of respect, which I thought was fabulous. And what a turnaround in Australia for that. And I applaud that.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing was that we had the pleasure of presenting our project that we have been doing in partnership with WTTC, actually, which we're nicknaming our STAP service offering, which stands for Sustainable Tourism Action Plan. And this is about taking action on the ground. This is working at destination level to align the three pillars of sustainability: the social, the environmental, with the economic, which is a lot easier said than done. But it's about doing a bottom-up approach, working with stakeholders on the ground in pilot destinations to develop strategies to help guide local stakeholders to develop sustainably.
So this is your signature blueprint. It's an ICF plan that you can go in to help cities, regions.
Yes, exactly. And we are currently working with the National Travel and Tourism Office of the US federal government on the delivery of a STAP methodology for a pilot destination. We can't reveal who that pilot destination is at the minute because we're just about to announce that. But this is really exciting because that's taking one individual destination, working out this methodology that's appropriate for the United States, and then replicating it. So it's all about replicability, and therefore starting small, getting it right, finding the solution, because it's an incredibly difficult nut to crack, aligning those three pillars, because often they're in conflict with each other. So starting small and then spreading that across the other destinations so that others can benefit from those learnings from the first one.
Which is also sustainable in itself, isn't it? Where you're sharing resources, you're not recreating the wheel and wasting what's been done and trusted and verified in a way. So STEP, so look into that. So for anybody looking for guidance, we just came back, it was kind of in tandem. You were over in Perth, we also had the Australian Regional Tourism Convention. So destination management planning with a layer, of course, of, it's not a layer above, it's a foundation of sustainability now in all of the destination management plans. I think it would be a good thing I think that's just something, again, a first that I've heard, like to have some type of a roadmap or a blueprint, like I was saying earlier. How about you, Nikos? Was there some ignition in you with the content, the speakers, any highlights that got you writing or punching in the notes of your phone?
Well, my OPA moments, and
Yes.
I'm very happy to adopt that term, being Greek myself, were absolutely all the content that had to do with the First Nations, Aboriginal communities, the importance that it has. So I learned very well with Jane on this. But it's more because we have, I'm proud as humanity that we are doing steps closer to understanding our mistakes, because we have done mistakes. And I'm Greek, I was not so much involved in such situations, but still I think this is a humanitarian action, and we can all feel responsible of what has happened to a level, and that we're taking action we try to correct. It's still a very long journey, but we owe it to humanity, and I'm happy to see that tourism is trying to make its fair share of contribution to that. So I highly welcome this discussion within the tourism dialogues in that sense. Now, another highlight for me was the importance of understanding the urgency that our industry has in advancing as quickly as possible towards the adaptation needed for climate change. We heard that a lot on different aspects, and it was revealing to see that we need to decarbonize. We need to make sure that we adapt sustainable practices as fast as possible. We need to make sure that some industries should not operate with the same model that they're operating now. We need to make sure that the local communities are having a say on everything that we do. We had some excellent panel discussions, and some were actually very interesting to read in between the lines. So I think this gave me the confidence that we're on the right way in from our side to be focusing on these challenges as well as solutions. And it was very fulfilling to see how we had a workshop at the Tourism Advisor Circle that we are part of. We had a workshop to discuss where we see the future of tourism going in 10 years' time from now, all about technology, empathy, emotional intelligence that will be needed in the future, and where we stand now and how we can make sure that this is being embraced, and we take the right actions now in order to make sure that our future generations are empathetic enough, because we most likely have a lot of automation in our industry at some point. So the human factor, which is the one that unites us and the one that gives us this different experience, will need to be coming from the fewer positions that will be humanly led. So empathy would be a very big a thing, a very big aspect of it. And you see it also, like, even for us consultants, in order to be able to understand what is happening with the destination, how this fine line between the tensions that might exist amongst residents and tourists, and maybe the companies that are operating there, their personal interests, then the authorities, maybe some political agendas that also could exist in parallel. You need a lot of empathy. You need to be there and have the ability to listen and understand. And this is a skill that I think even in our industry will become increasingly in demand, because the more complex the problems become, the more empathy we will need in order to untangle them.
Funny you say that, because I was just about, like, the presentation that I delivered at the art convention was all about maximising the use of AI in your content. So optimising your long form content, and specifically helped participants deliver a blog. And I touched on that. I shared an essay that I wrote, like, it was the first essay that I got. I came here not speaking English. It wasn't, it wasn't spoken in my house, but it was a reflective essay, and I aced it, and I got an A, and I just found it at my parents' house, right? But I used it as an example, like, that was just all coming out from somewhere. It was empathy, because I was just tasked with share your feelings, and I got an A on that. But now the content that we're delivering is a whole lot of vanilla, because it's missing that, that artificial intelligence, in the way that we're communicating even. How is that conversation, and what is happening in your ICF worlds when it comes to AI technology? Like, I brought you down low. Now take me up.
AI is hugely important for ICF, and we're investing a huge amount in using it in the right way. This is really important, and using it in the right way is critical, so that we don't misuse it. I can't really comment much more than that, because I'm not a huge user of it myself. I have used it, but minimally. Whereas our experts are finding it extremely useful, and the trick is, I think, making sure that they are using it to save time, but not to cut corners.
Oh, I like that.
I like that too.
I like that.
We all like that.
Yeah, and I'm personally a big fan of the empathy piece, the people piece. I have a psychology degree. I don't have any qualifications relating to aviation. There's the big irony and the big reveal. Who knew? Psychology, though, as it happens, is coming quite useful. Because there's a people element to everything that we do. We talk about stakeholder engagement, that's about people. And I'm a firm believer that we are going through a period of transition, major transition in both aviation and, the world. But I was going to say tourism, of course, but the whole world has got to transition to a more sustainable footing. We've got to take climate change seriously. And we've got to make sure that our communities are put front and centre. And we can't do that without putting people front and centre to make that happen. So I'm a great fan of making sure that our pipeline of talent that comes into the industry at the other end I'm not far off retiring. At the young end, we have to have a diversity of talent to make sure that we retain the people skills and the empathy, and therefore the diversity of thinking that will be necessary to make sure that we transition in the industry, in our industry and across the world, because otherwise we will fail.
It's changing every day in that space, and how these two can help each other. I love what you've just said. We want to create efficiencies without cutting corners here, or the deep thinking that's required to be able to solve these challenges. But it also starts with us just as citizens, like not even in business or commercial elements. So I do love it with my kids from young, you know, they're learning sustainable practices at school, because it probably wasn't there when I went to school. Like what, you know, we still don't know which bin to put something in, right? But look, to try to wrap this up, because it's getting late in the evening here, and I'm so grateful we could go. Yeah. What's next for you? What's the next? What's next in terms of a project, or what's keeping you getting out of bed bright-eyed and bushy-tailed? I'll start with you. What's the, you know?
Well, it's my wonderful colleagues that get me out of bed every morning and inspire me every day. I always say I learn something new every day from these guys. I really do. And that, how lucky am I? Really? How lucky am I to be able to say that? And I love what I do because it feels like I'm making a difference. What's next is carrying on doing what we're doing, but getting it over the line.
Yes.
So we can continue having lots and lots of ideas, but never getting them to the point where they're actually making a difference. With SAF, that was an idea a few years back, and we've pushed water uphill to get to the point where actually we're working with clients who for whom we are making a difference. Our challenge now, Nikos and I, together in the tourism space, is with the concepts that we have identified that our clients in the tourism space need, is to make sure that we get those projects over the line so that they've made a difference.
Yes, yes. You've got a lot on your plate.
What Jane is saying is, you know, the tip of the iceberg, in the sense that what goes behind, in order for us to identify the big challenges and solutions that can address these challenges, has been a wonderful, turbulent, time-demanding work. But I think it was such a fruitful journey, which will continue, I'm absolutely sure. But up to now, it has been an excellent journey that enriched me with new perspectives. And you know, like you were saying, Nikos, every time that we speak, you are like always thinking big. Well, now I feel that I'm 100% thinking bigger, or thinking, trying to think ahead, and see, okay, how we solve the difficult challenges that we have. Because for me, the important thing is not to only, you know, deal with a marketing campaign. That's very nice, and I have done it, and I will love to do it again for interesting cases. But for me, it's, okay, so how can we really make a difference here? How we can really help destinations become accepted by the new traveler in the way that, you know, we see it being shaped, and how we empower them to be the best version of the destinations they can be. And this is way easier said than done. And it needs a lot of advocacy. It needs a lot of, you know, providing the solution. Because when you have a big challenge, sometimes you close your ears. Sometimes you don't want to face it, and you want to focus on your easier tasks that you have ahead. Because the problems that we all facing, or the tasks that we need to do in order to, you know, continue, are numerous. But the big ones, we might not even want to address them because they're very big and they scare us. What I want to do here is say, hey, let's acknowledge that there's something difficult coming up. We have big challenges, but we have solutions. We have solutions. We can do it. We're already thinking about it, and let's do it together. Let's do projects that really will make this world more prosperous and resilient for all through tourism.
just like you got us to make this podcast happen. Like you just need the energy and the optimism to do that. Quickly finish off. Your best advice someone's given you in your career, Nikos?
I think I will say the same thing that I said during our last podcast.
Yeah?
Because it has been the best advice, was when you're advising on something or when you want to put something in paper as this is your position, make sure you revise it 10 times.
Yes.
And this will give you the ability to think and rethink and challenge and say, okay, do I really want to say this?
Yeah.
Like, do I really believe it?
Yeah.
And by this process, especially when it's something very important, because let's face it, private sector is also very fast-paced. You might not have the luxury to revise something 10 times, but whenever I have to do something that is very important, I do take the time in order to revise
marinate it. Yeah.
To revise it 10 times and say, okay, this is it.
Yes. Yes. Love. How about you, Jane?
I think it's more simple than that, and it's don't take no as the first answer.
Oh, nice. Nice.
That's where I am today.
Nice. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. This is a treat to have you both here in Melbourne, and that we could do this face to face is really, really special. And I couldn't agree more. I'd stay up to the wee hours just to have this chat. It's definitely, you've taken me on a journey to think about things that I don't spend my days thinking about, but we need to. But now I know. Like even just the thought of like booking travel and being a more conscious traveller in that way. It's just something I don't consider. I'll pay the extra money, like pay the extra and you feel good to do that. But just going down that deep level of SAF and the work that you're doing. And Nikos, I just think it just fills me with pride to see your journey. And I know we talked about this in our last podcast. I mean, to see your lecture, this evening, I mean, it's a real testament to what hard work and dedication, because it's not easy to go on the other side of the world and study on your own, when English is not your first language, which a lot of students are doing, as we heard from Vicky, making those sacrifices. But you've inspired many tonight in your university coming back to speak to the other masters in tourism students, and also everyone that's listening, and myself, the two of you, dynamic duo that you are at ICF. We'll stay in touch. I'll look forward to just unpacking all the resources that you've shared to put onto the show notes with SAF.
We love the acronyms now.
We do. I mean, that's universal, isn't it?
You have to help me with an acronym on heat resilience and tourism. On this, I don't have resilience.
Yes, that's not good.
HRT.
HRT. Because that's medical, isn't it? HRT. Yeah.
You're obviously too young.
Yeah.
Heart. With
a
heart
solution.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Heart to the heart.
The heart.
Yeah.
Heat resilience and tourism.
Heat resilience in tourism.
And tourism.
Yeah. Heart. You got it. There you go. Another problem we've solved. But heat resilience in tourism, that's a biggie.
It is.
Yeah, without going back there, we'll have to but that's also fair. I've been thinking about that. It's true. I mean, it's the same here in Australia. We can hit some high temperatures. Yeah. Thank you. Safe travels home. Keep doing the good work, and I'll look forward to connecting with you. Lovely to meet you for the first time.
Likewise.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to everyone for listening and for watching along. Jane and Nikos, ICF, check out the show notes for all of the resources that I will get from the team here, onwards and upwards, and also this World Travel and Trade Tourism Council. Just something I didn't know that. Even for myself, sometimes you can become quite insular, but going on a global stage like that and knowing that it was here in our own backyard, that was a bit of a missed opportunity. But not now, because you've come to my backyard.
We told you all about it.
We were able to unpack it, which I couldn't be more grateful. All right. Thank you, everyone. Stay inspired and do better, be better today than you did yesterday, really, is the message here that can all align us. All right. Bye for now.